I hope there's tons of clap emojis. I can't see anyone, but I'm just picturing a beautiful crowd of awesome people who care about accessibility. Thanks to the previous speaker, Chris. That was awesome. I'm Harris. I'm a web developer primarily. I work on the Axe extension. I've actually just moved into a new kind of facet of my career to try out product management on that product that I've been building for several years now. I also work on the ARIA spec as a working group member. I care deeply about accessibility. I've been doing it for almost 9 years, and I'm told cool. There's a lot of clapping happening in Vito. Awesome. And what I want to do today, I'm going to share my screen in a minute, is just showcase a bit of the Axe extension. There's a ton of cool free stuff that I think can help your team immensely. Simple stuff like was mentioned in the previous talk. The low-hanging fruit, the Axe is really great at helping you find those and maybe even helping you fix them. Then we're gonna bleed into a little bit of the more fancy features that we have behind, unfortunately, a paywall. But I want to show what's going on in that front as far as taking taking what we can do with automation and taking it a step further with a little bit of human intervention. So with that being said, I'm gonna move my video window up so I can share my screen. All right, should be able to see some yummy recipes on the screen. And so what I have here is a recipe dashboard. It's a fake site that we made for kind of demo purposes. It has some intentional accessibility issues. That will make this demo more fun, obviously. It's less fun to just test perfectly accessible content. That's pretty rare. So it's early in the morning for me. It's a little chilly here in San Diego, but I will say I'm already getting kind of hungry looking at some of these recipes. But side by side, I have my test page, my recipe app, and next to that is my Axe extension. It's in the Chrome developer tools. For those who are unfamiliar with it, it's just a browser extension. It's available in Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. But really what it's doing under the hood is running Axe Core, which is an accessibility rules engine. Axe Core finds that low-hanging fruit we keep referring to. It runs in like a DOM or DOM-like environment, and using JavaScript, it's able to determine things like color contrast issues or form fields that are unlabeled. So things that are very common, but also the cool thing is they're usually pretty easy to fix. Especially if you think about it from the start. I think that touched into Vitaly's last question, where it's actually a lot easier to address some of the stuff like color, like branding colors. If your marketing folks are thinking about it, if your design folks are thinking about it. But let's just get started. So that's what it says on the extension after all. Let's get started. So what I'm going to do first is just click the scan all of my page button. And what that's going to do is, under the hood, as I'll keep saying, is just going to call Axe Core's run method. The JavaScript would literally be await axe.run, and it's going to run on the whole body. So I'm going to hit scan all my page. All right. In a matter of milliseconds, it has found 12 issues. It's broken it down by severity, if you will. So we have a category for the critical issues that we find, the serious, the moderate, and the minor. And I'm running this on my local server. This extension, unless you lock it down heavily on what pages it can run on, it should work on your local server, on your production, on your QA server, any website really. So yeah, let's take a look at these 12 issues. Let's start by filtering it by the critical severity. And we have 8 images that are lacking alternative text or a role of none or presentation. So we can do fun stuff like highlight them to see what we're talking about. And what that does is highlight the element on the page. And I can actually cycle through each of the elements. And on the test page, actually, a little dim kind of Chrome style highlighter shows up, and a tooltip with some extra information that you might want to see about the element, like its role or its accessible text if applicable. But But more importantly, the extension is actually telling me what's wrong. And that can mean a number of things. Like I said, we might want to add alt equals quote, quote, if this is a decorative image, or role equals none, or role equals presentation. Any of those actually will suffice. Screen readers know what to do with that information. It gives us a unique selector for the element. So if you're a developer and maybe you're using some kind of framework where you can pass the selector in, you might be able to just copy that out of here. Gives you the source code. That's always great for circling back on an issue. Knowing what issue or knowing what element had that violation is usually pretty important. And also what's great is actually for a lot of these issues, we have recommendations to fix catered for the specific type of issue. So in this case, it says to solve this issue, you need to fix at least one of these issues. Element does not have an alt attribute. Like I said, we could add alt equals filet mignon if we feel that this page or this image is informative. If it's decorative, we'd probably do alt equals quote, quote. You could add an accessible name to it via the ARIA label attribute or the ARIA labeled by attribute, or title even. Or like I said, you can mark it as decorative. That's all awesome. If you're more technical, maybe you want to inspect it and view the element in the elements panel. And I can just click inspect and it pops me over to the elements panel. And now I can walk around the DOM tree and, maybe acquire some extra context by looking at it through there. All right. And beyond that, we have a more info link, which I think is also pretty awesome because it actually links you to Deque University, completely free content, open to everybody. You can share this with a friend, share this with your teammate if they need help. And we have these dedicated pages for each rule. And that actually dives a little deeper than what we had in the extension UI. Stuff like code samples of a fixed version of that issue, why it matters, and actually tons of other resources that you can click on from here. So really, really great. The way I see it actually, and I've seen it before and actually kind of happened to myself, is as you use tools like these, Axe Core or anything else like that, for that matter, something kind of automation-wise, whether it's a linter maybe or a GitHub action that scans your page deployed on Netlify every commit, anything like that, you actually kind of start learning from your mistakes, which is great. So I've actually view this tool not as really necessarily an auditor tool or a testing tool, which it is, but it also is a little bit of a tutor, and it can teach you about accessibility and what kind of people it affects and what ways and cool techniques that you can avoid that problem in the future. It's really cool stuff. Let's just look at the other serious issues. And they have, looks like we have 4 color contrast issues. I think color contrast was a bingo item, and I think Axe was too. So thank me later. I think I just got you 2. Cool thing about this color contrast issue is in the metadata with the issue, in that recommendation to fix, we actually calculated the exact precise color contrast ratio, and it explained to you how we arrived at that and what the expected color contrast ratio for this content is. So in this case, because we have some small text, we need the ratio to be 4.5 to 1, and it is 2.17 to 1 here. So what we'd probably do is change the color of this beginner text. We're looking at the recipe card has a difficulty breakdown, and it looks like this page is using color as kind of an alternate key. Of course, we have the text beginner, which is we're not using color alone as information, but in this case, the color we are using is not color contrast compliant. So what I'm actually going to do, I wasn't even planning on doing this, but this is a cool thing that I think anyone can do if you're familiar enough with the developer tools in Chrome. It's very similar in Firefox and definitely really similar in Edge. I have this recipes card with the TD with the CSS modifier class of beginner, sorry. And so it looks like we use too light of a shade of green. So let me just darken it and keep going. Okay, cool. So I'm using Chrome's built-in, I don't know what you'd call this, color palette tool. It has an eyedropper. You can actually click anywhere on the page and it will grab the color at that exact pixel. But really cool. Glad Chrome shipped this. It actually, as I moved around the palette, it was constantly calculating the contrast ratio for me. So I just changed it to a darker shade of green. My designer is still happy. I still have that green to give it a little bit of a little cherry on top of aesthetically. And of course, like I said, we still have the text, so non-sighted users get all the same information. And Chrome actually told me, hey, you're good. This is 5.4 to 1 contrast ratio with the light or white background. So I'm going to choose that and use this nifty little rerun tool. Look at that. So my serious issues went away, and now I just have the 8 critical, which we went over already, which are the images must have alternate text. So a cool thing, little trick you can do is edit the source in the elements pane and rerun Axe and see what kind of different results you get. You know, I have a local dev server running, and usually when I personally use this is I have the dev server running. I'll actually make the code changes. My dev server automatically reloads the page, and then I'll just click Axe rerun, and it will tell me if I fixed anything. Really cool stuff. So moving on, we should have a few more features to go over that are completely free. Everything's free. This Chrome extension's free. There's some more details here about the impact, about when it was found, how it was found, as well as these issue tags, which I think are really useful because you can actually see which WCAG level this rule falls under. In this case, it's WCAG 2A. We also have a WCAG checkpoint that's associated with that. So that would be WCAG 1.1.1. If I remember correct, WCAG is another bingo term. So thank me later. So that's another way you can get an idea of where maybe if you're doing something like a VPAT, or you want to send some of this to maybe your accessibility expert on your team, you can actually tell them which WCAG rule set it falls under, and maybe even the specific checkpoint, so they can give you some more background on it. So that's all awesome. Like I said, Axe Core is free too. You don't have to use it in the form of an extension. You can run it in, as I said, a DOM or DOM-like environment. The reason I said DOM-like is a lot of times, if you're a developer, your team might have some unit tests that you run. And a lot of times those unit tests, unless you're doing full functional tests or integration tests or end-to-end tests, you might actually be running it in like a fake DOM, like JS DOM maybe. And Axe actually is able to run most of its rules in that environment. So, you know, if pointing and clicking and using this UI and this extension isn't your cup of tea, easy enough to integrate Axe anywhere else, or any other kind of accessibility automation tool for that matter. Axe isn't the only one. Axe is, if you've never used it, you might have used it without you knowing. It actually is what's running the accessibility checks in Google's Lighthouse assessment. I think it's built into Chrome. Yep. So we have Lighthouse, so that's cool. So if you want to get your Axe results while you're also getting your security and performance results, you can do that. So that's all great. I want to use this time though to show how we can get past this low-hanging fruit section of what's automatable, what's easily detectable by robots or JavaScript, let's say, and let's get into maybe some stuff where my human brain might be able to help out with the testing. But I won't really need to know a ton about accessibility. So instead of beating around the bush, I'm just going to go ahead and save my results. Saving your results is a pro feature. So you need to either have an active subscription with Axe or a trial. Liz from Deque Marketing has a promo code. I believe it's Smashing, and you can get 20% off. And it's a 2-week free trial, so you can really see if it's something that will help your team. But I'm going to hit save results now and give it a name. Low Smashing Meets. And now my results, those 8 issues are persisted in our database. Now I can go have lunch, maybe mom's spaghetti or something, and come back and finish my accessibility testing. But for time's sake, and so you don't have to watch me eat mom's spaghetti, I'm going to just get right into it right now. Now that I've saved, I can see all sorts of cool stuff about my test. I can even see, what OS I was using, operating system. I was on Mac when I ran this, which Chrome specific version I was using, what version of Axe Core was run. Maybe some other integration elsewhere on your team is using a different version that might explain different results, and all sorts of other fun metadata that we capture when you run your scan. without further ado, I want to just get into, I think, the most important demo of this presentation, and that is our guided tests. It's kind of what I was just getting at. Guided tests goal. Our goal is obviously to help you cover 100% of your accessibility testing, and that's hopefully the direction we're moving. But also we know that accessibility is complicated. WCAG is lengthy. It's really daunting. I've actually done assessments myself before, and sat in front of at the time we were using a spreadsheet of just every single check that Deque's interpretation of WCAG required me to make. And it's grueling. It requires some expertise that not everybody has or has the time to ramp up to. So the goal of guided tests is to push that aside. We'll ask you really simple, usually yes or no questions or point and click questions, and we'll do the heavy lifting and kind of arrive at some accessibility issues without you really noticing, as you answer some questions about your content that you're either working on or you own, or maybe you're the tester of. So better than me explaining it would be me just showing it. So I want to show my favorite tool, the keyboard tool. The reason it's my favorite, just as a little fun background story, is I started off almost 10 years ago working in front end accessibility, and it was always a huge gap in testing. I like automating things like developers usually do, and there's always this huge gap where I wanted to test like basic keyboard functionality, like what's the tab order of my page, and you couldn't really do that in any kind of automation environment, whether it's, like I said, end-to-end tests or unit tests or anything like that, in a headless browser even. So if I had, let's say, I implemented a tabs widget, I could actually get some good coverage there. I could fire kind of simulated arrow key events, and since I had a specific JavaScript event handler on a specific element, that can react, and we actually will see focus shift. And we can make assertions about that in our unit testing environment. But there's never really a tool out there that really just showed the natural tab order, the tab sequence of a page firing real tabs. Like I said, it would require you to have basically an event listener on every single tab stop on your page, which I think a total of 0 sites probably want to do, just for the sake of being able to automate it. So this tool actually is the first that I know of that exists, that actually fires real tabs. It's using some awesome Chrome APIs. And so what I'm going to do is hit start. And for those of you who can see my video feed, I'm going to put my hands up to prove to you that I'm not actually tabbing through the page, and it's actually just the extension doing its magic. So let's do that. So I hit start, and now on the page what we have is it's automatically tabbing through. It's highlighting it with a little enumerated tab stop highlight, as I like to call it. And so what's going on right now under the hood? All I've had to do is press start. I don't need to know anything about accessibility. I don't even need to know anything about WCAG rules. It's capturing the tab sequence, obviously. And for each tab stop, it's actually assessing the focus indication, whether it's missing or it's insufficient according to WCAG. And it's looking at the roles of each element. It's looking at the accessible name of each element. It's doing a ton of quick checks on each tab stop. And it's done. It says we found 18 tab stops. Click next to continue. So it didn't take too long for us to get through the whole page. Visually, we have a nice tab sequence with the enumerated highlights. And here in the UI, we actually tell you how many we found. I'm gonna hit next. And it's asking me a simple question now. Like I said, it's usually just a yes or no question, nothing too fancy. So it's saying, are there any elements that you expected to be in the tab order but were not? And there are two options. The radio group is yes, there were elements skipped in the tab order. No, there's nothing skipped. So as the author of this content, I'm actually aware of what I'm expecting to be a tab stop. If you're at all confused as to what that might mean, you can definitely look at some Deque University content that will explain what an interactive element is. But just as a quick summary, in the context of this page, an interactive element is what I'm expecting to see to be all the tab stops. So that would be just like my top bar menu items up here, and each of the clickable controls in each of these recipe cards. Because when I click this pencil icon, it actually brings up an edit modal. When I click this cook button, it will bring up a kind of a read the ingredients and the instructions out modal. So in this case, nothing was skipped to the tab order. Now it's saying, hey, we've detected some elements in the tab order which lack a role which indicates interactivity to assistive technology. So for assistive technology to convey all the right information to its users, it needs to know stuff about the purpose of the element. And when I say purpose of element, you can really map that to the role attribute, a ARIA role, or using semantic HTML, maybe the explicit or implicit role. So what that means is maybe using a button tag instead of a div. If you absolutely have to, maybe it would be a div with role button. But we really need to convey that purpose. So this question is saying, hey, you actually have some elements which didn't convey anything interactive-wise. So something's a little wrong here. So go ahead and tell us what the purpose of each of these elements are. So in this case, each and every one of the pencil icons is being flagged here. And I know that those are interactive because when I click it, like I said, it brings up an edit recipe modal. So that's actually everything it's called out here. It's these pencil icons. So I'm going to leave element is interactive. The other options, for what it's worth, are the element is a scrollable region. That's something you want to, that isn't necessarily clickable or interactive, but you'd want to leave it focusable so keyboard users can scroll the region. And then there's the option where it's, hey, it's neither interactive nor scrollable, in which case, you might have some work to do. So I'm going to leave this as interactive for all of them and hit next. All right. So in a few minutes, would have been quicker if I didn't blabber on. But in 3 minutes, we found 15 accessibility issues here. I didn't have to know anything about WCAG or any fancy accessibility expertise. None of that was needed. Answered some simple questions, and we arrived at 15 issues. We can actually, just like after we ran our automated act scan, we can inspect the issues, we can highlight them. But let's go over what it found. It found that the visual focus indicator is missing altogether for each of these pencil icons. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to tab through. Okay, I'm on chocolate cake, so I will expect to see the next element in the tab order to be Mom Spaghetti's little edit button. I'm there, but there's no focus indication anywhere. Your users will have a hard time figuring out where they are, making it a really confusing and inaccessible experience. So that's something we'd want to fix. Another type of issue that we found is that the element's role is missing or not appropriate for the element's function. So remember, I said, hey, this element is interactive. And the tool says, ooh, you're missing something here. So let's inspect it. And yep, sure enough, we have div with a tab index of 0. Again, to drive home a point that I'm sure many of you heard, using semantic HTML would have been better here. I would just use a button tag, and I'd get that tab index for free. I'd get the keyboard clicking it with enter or space for free. A lot less JavaScript, right, which devs always like. But if I absolutely had to leave this as a div, I'd leave the tab index on. I'd add a role equals button. I'd add a JavaScript event listener for key downs on this button and listen for enter or space and programmatically click it, the JavaScript click method. So that's what I would have to do there. And that's all it found. So I'm going to hit finish, and it's going to save my results. And just like that, we have our first IGT done. We know what to do. They're all pretty simple fixes. Changing this to a button tag is what I will do. And adding a focus indication, which has likely been suppressed by maybe the designer on my team's need to suppress that. Definitely tell them that it's important, and it's actually another opportunity to have your designer design something that looks cool. I think I've watched certain designers kind of eyes light up when talking about focus indication, because it's another place to get creative and make your content look fancy and pretty. I'm almost done. I just want to do two last things. You can export these issues at any time. You can export all of them, just specifically the keyboard issues you wanted to, in JSON or CSV. That means you can export it and pop it into your issue tracking system like Jira. And the last and most important thing is, like I said, we want to help you get 100% of your accessibility testing coverage with our tool. At the moment, guided tests only cover some, I think up to 80 to 85% of your accessibility testing. So there's that remaining 15%, which we cover in this content, which I just clicked a what's left to test link on my dev tools. It popped open a new tab into our web app, and it actually has an awesome list that you can go through. Maybe before your release cycle, this will really get you in a position to be kind of like in a VPAT like scenario where you could just answer these questions and raise issues yourself if you find any. all sorts of resources. This is a little bit grueling because accessibility testing requires you to do a lot because your users are using various technologies, various user agents. But this actually does a really good job of breaking down and simplifying the remaining testing you could do. You can just go through this, and at the end of it, you can say, I've ran Axe, I've ran all my guided tools, and I've went through what's left to test. We're good. Good job, team. We're all Axe clean. I think that's all I have time for. I appreciate everyone's time. Like I said, there's tons of tools out there. I think adding in anything to address that low-hanging fruit is great. So yeah, happy accessibility testing. Thanks for listening in. And Vitaly, this time you're muted.
Story. No, it's always a story with those buttons, actually. I'm very, very happy to see and hear that we are making such incredible progress in terms of tooling as well. We are a little bit behind schedule, so I'm just going to give you 2 questions, and we'll expect nothing short of really short answers, if that's possible. So first of all, X DevTools launched testing on Swift UI, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so does it mean that we can test now on iOS? And you're muted now.
Yes, I am. Yeah, we do offer some tooling for Android and iOS. So I recommend heading over to Deque's website to get more information about it. I'm not a complete expert by any means on Android or iOS development, so I'm probably not the best resource to begin with. But yeah, we do offer coverage there for your mobile app testing.
Good, excellent. Well, you kind of covered some features that you really like and that you really are kind of fond of. I'm wondering, is there anything left in your kind of dream box of all, or like, let's say, the fanciest features you ever wanted to have in terms of accessibility? Do you have anything in your wish list that you definitely want to become reality soon, or anything that's missing in the market in general?
I'll keep it brief. So I know a lot of people are intrigued by the possibility that machine learning might help with accessibility testing, which I think is great. There's certainly some cool stuff happening in our tools as far as machine learning. I work with a guy on my team who's an expert there, and we've been trying to find all sorts of ways to improve our coverage using machine learning. But beyond that, I think, you can call it machine learning. It's a buzzword, but I think it'd be cool for tools to start adapting to the content being tested. So with a tool like Axe that you're going to be running over and over again, usually on, hopefully you'll be running over and over again on similar content, or at least pages in the same app, it would be cool for it to start learning from maybe an accessibility issue that you can find commonly in your header, and it will adapt the rest of your testing. So I think for automation tools to actually start storing metadata about the pages being testing and maybe making it more efficient for subsequent runs, I think that would be cool.
Excellent. Well, the future is bright then. Well, that makes me very happy. Let's see how it's going to evolve. Excellent. Well, I think we might see you a little bit later in the panel that we're going to have later. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us. And please give a very warm round, a very warm clap emoji, maybe a T emoji. Harris, do you like tea?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get Harris 60. T emoji for Harry Schneiderman, everyone from Deque.